Okay, so if you could, because I'm tethered here, I'm looking at cordless microphones to make life easier for us. But if you could just get up, come to me instead of me coming to you, or somebody could be the collector. Yes, sir. Not beaten for this or any other. This happens. Once I came here and I had to go shopping and everything, and I totally forgot my purse, and I had no glasses, so I don't judge. Okay, so I have a paper just to give that to you. So is everybody who has a paper for me giving it to me?
No, I thought.
That's fine. That's fine. Yeah, you can email it to me. Your parents all have my email address. Yeah, your mom can help you, and I already sent to this morning's email. So I have papers to get back to you. A couple of comments. As we go through the year, I'm probably going to start making shorthand, so I don't have to explain everything if I change something. But I noticed a couple of things. So this doesn't apply to everybody in the room, but it's a good thing to know. It's something we don't think about sometimes. When you're telling a story, if you start out in a certain tense, you probably want to keep it in that same tense. So if you're telling the story in past tense, he did this, he went there, then that happened. It's very jolting if you suddenly start talking in present tense. Next, he does this, and this happens. Try to pick a tense and stay in it. It's okay to use present tense. Sometimes people tell a story that happened in the past, but they're just telling it in the present tense. That's fine. But for a couple of you, I marked that. And then a couple of you, the rule about quotation marks. So if I say, it's raining, no, it's just raining in general. I put a comma, he said. We separate the quote part unless you have an exclamation point or something. It was, I think the people who did it like this. He said, it's raining. And there was just no punctuation in between. And it's customary to put a comma there to separate it out. And maybe you already know that. A couple of people did this, and maybe it was just an accident, but I just wanted to point it out. So we have, Matthew, can you pass this back to Matthew? And also 2 pages for Matthias next to you. And Jesse, that.
Are we allowed to do whatever copy fonts we want?
Do whatever what?
Font. Like,
oh yeah, I don't care. I mean, as long as it's readable.
Okay, I did a different font than I'm
And Owen. So here's everybody. Listen, because you guys know this already, but some people don't. So I would like you to just take a moment and look at your paper. Did you give me one? Okay, because I just feel sometimes I don't lose them. Sometimes they go on the wrong shelf. I have a Tuesday shelf, a Wednesday shelf, and a Thursday shelf, and they just get scrambled. So that's a good thing. If you think you should get a paperback from me and you don't get a paperback from me, please tell me, because it might be on the wrong shelf at home. Second of all, please look over your paper. If I changed anything on your paper, added a comma, crossed something out, and you don't know why, I tried to explain for many of them why. But if you don't know why, please ask. Please ask. And sometimes I will write, and I don't know if I did to anyone this week in here. Sometimes I will write on your paper, please ask about this in class. And the reason I do that is someone else did it too. Or many people did it too. And it takes more effort for me to write it out on people's papers than it does for me to just tell everybody this is the rule for writing this. Does that make sense? So I'm not trying to out you. I'm not trying to embarrass you in front of everyone else by saying, please ask me, and I'm going to publicly, tell everyone you made this mistake. It's because you're not the only one, because it's really common, and it reminds me, please talk to them about that, okay? So there's our deal. If I ask you to do that, please you said ask you about this, because I won't remember. That'd be great. Which brings me to the next thing I didn't remember last week. I brought pictures to show you, and I didn't show you. I went home later. So we're talking about the Greek gods, and I wanted to show you a couple of pictures. This is a temple. This is actually an ancient Greek temple. This is a temple of Hephaestus, or Hephaestus, I'd like to say it, the blacksmith god. And it is in Athens, and it is the best preserved temple in Greece, as you can see. Most of them just have a few columns left. They have little bits of the roof. This one looks magnificent. I'm kind of in the front, but you can see people back behind. You can get in. Yeah, this is me.
I know, but like inside.
Oh, no, you can't go in it. You can't go in it. I thought you said, did I go to it? These people are next to it, so you can get a feeling for the size. But they're just amazing. This must have been the most beautiful thing. And they used to have, they've taken them off, carved statues in the pediment, and they would paint them. They were colorful. We get used to ancient ruins being just all gray and stone colored, but they were colorful. They were painted, and sometimes they find bits of the paint still left on the statuary, but of course this was 2,500 years ago, so you have to paint your house more than once every 2,500 years, or it doesn't work out very well. But so I wanted to show you this because this must have been amazing to go in one of these places. It must have been very awe-inspiring. What you would find inside is not at all like a modern church. There are no chairs. You don't sit. You don't have a service there. There's an altar to make an offering, and there is a large statue of the god whose temple it is. Yes, sir.
I have a question that doesn't have anything with any of this, but are we allowed to keep going?
Oh, I don't care.
Okay.
Just don't leave it any place. In your mouth or trash can, or honoring the church. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is we talked about some of the gods. We talked about Apollo last week, and we said how he's the multi-purpose god. Like what do we call the knife? Yeah, like a multi-tool, but Swiss Army knife. I feel like I wanted to think of another name with the knife that things pop out of. Swiss Army knife. So he's the god of music. He's the god of the sun. He also was a god of another very important thing that I just completely forgot to mention, and I think Dorothy Mills mentioned. The oracle. He had an oracle. We didn't talk at all last week about the oracles. So if you have a question, you are Greek and you have a question, and it's really important. It's not just what should I have for breakfast. It's an important question, okay? It's a life-changing question. You go or you send messengers to one of the oracles of the gods. Zeus had an oracle at Dodona, and it involved oak trees where the leaves would rustle, and then the priestess could understand the rustling of the leaves. Just telling you what it was. And then tell you what the god is telling you through the rustling of the leaves. I don't know what to say about that, yes.
Don't you have to donate something?
Well, it's nice to donate something, indeed. Often the donation comes after your news comes true, in thanks. Does that make sense? Okay, so it's not, you don't have to pay a fee or anything, but the most popular and famous one in the ancient world was at Delphi. It's about it was a bus ride about 3 hours. So I don't know how long it would take you to walk a bus ride of 3 hours up into the mountains. And what you would do is you would go and ask, present your question. First, actually, you climb up the mountain and there was a spring, the Castalian spring. And you have to purify yourself. You have to take a little bath, wash at least your face, whatever, in the fountain. Then you go up to the temple and there's a priestess there. And you say, ask Apollo this question. And then the priestess goes in. Well, I can tell you this is built into a mountain with ravines, cracks in the rock. And people think that gases came up from under the rock. Okay, so do you know how when people mine for coal, when you dig into the ground, sometimes there's gases trapped, and it can be fatal, right? And they used to take, like canaries in cages. Do you know about the canaries in cages? Yes. And so if the bird dies when you're down in the cave, get out. Because the bird will die before you because the bird is so much smaller. But you're next. So if the bird dies, get out. Anyway, she wasn't under the ground. She was just standing over it, but there were these gases coming up. And okay, this is a maybe. Maybe it caused some sort of hallucination. Maybe she heard voices, maybe kind of like taking drugs. Okay, so she went and took drugs, I don't know, whatever she did. And you know what, I say that laughingly, but I should also say, we don't know that demons were communicating with her. The story I just told you is the story told by a lot of people who maybe don't believe in demons, right? So we have to explain it somehow, so maybe she just sucked up gases and went a little wacky. But maybe somebody was communicating with her. I don't know. But then she would come out of the temple and she would give you the answer. But it was notoriously iffy on the answer. Like, maybe I understand it and maybe I don't. So the most famous story of this is there was a king named Croesus, and he lived in what is today Turkey. So the country just right across the Aegean Sea from Greece. And he was very near the Persian Empire. He was bordering them. And he was a really, really rich guy. He was very powerful, but his kingdom was fairly small, and the Persians were heading his way. And he didn't like it, because he knew he was going to get taken over. So he sent a messenger to the temple at Delphi and to ask Apollo, should I attack the Persians? And the answer from the priestess was, if you attack, a mighty empire will fall. This is all they asked. And they went back to Croesus and they told him, and he's, yeah, that's the answer I wanted. He attacks Persia, and maybe you can see the rest of the story. There was another question they should have asked. Which empire? Because it was Croesus's. Croesus lost. A mighty empire will fall. So you always have to be very literal and very specific with the priestess.
Another question like that?
I don't know. Maybe she'd have to go back in, but it was notorious for giving you what we would call ambiguous answers. Anyway, here is all that is left of the Temple of Apollo at Delphi. Basically, it is 6 columns, but you can kind of see the terrain. We talked about Greece being very, very mountainous. And far above this, if you wind your way up the mountain, is a theater built into the rock. And then farther up above that is an actual race course, an oval race course where they had sporting events, which we will talk about today when we talk about the Olympic Games. And by the time you get up there, it's just really very steep and high. You can barely see down to the temple anymore. You're up so high. This was quite, and the path coming up to it is like this too. So if you're walking, a 3.5 mile drive today from Athens, this was quite a journey. And Croesus came across the ocean, across the Aegean Sea. People came from the whole Mediterranean just to visit this temple. And the Castalian spring is still there, but it's not flowing, it's not bubbling anymore. It's just sort of a stagnant, it's just a pit. It's just a pit in the ground.
There's no water.
Basically. There wasn't when I was there. It was kind of gross. And
How close did you get to the ruins?
You could get this one didn't have fences around it. That temple and the places in Athens had fences, so you couldn't get to it. But I'll end with this. This is just a digression, but it's a funny story. In places where it was open like this, places in the Agora in Athens were open like this, they had a little hut, a little booth. It looked like a toll booth or something. And there was a person in it. And if you touched anything, they blew a whistle at you. They were just there to blow whistles at you. I'm not kidding. No, I mean, so the whistle blows and you look around and like, who did it? Is it me? Because if you set your purse down on it, whistle. You know, if you leaned on it, whistle. If you just were tired and you sat down on something that was not just a rock, but it was something important, they will blow a whistle at you. There were whistles going off all the time. So it just, and it was, you didn't want to be the person. Because if the whistle blows, everyone looks around like, was it you? And everyone's looking at you, and you don't want to be that person. So that kind of kept me honest.
Wait, did you hit the whistle blower?
No, because I am an extreme rule follower. But I met a lady. We went to the island that today they call Egna. Just like a 45-minute hour trip into the harbor outside of Athens. And just a second, let me finish the question. Remember your answer. Remember your question. Let me finish that. And I met a lady. The lady who was running my hotel was from Crete, and she came there to run this hotel when her dad died. And she's an art historian. And I told her about where we'd been, and she said, I said, but I didn't touch it. And I laughed, and she said, oh, you should touch. She said, you should touch. They're meant to be, everyone should touch. I'm afraid of the whistle.
How does he like?
What?
How does he like?
Because they are positioned where they can see everything, or they wander around with their whistle. Yes, with eyes. I wanted to. I wanted to. You know, once at the Art Institute of Chicago, my son just is into a weird painter named Salvador Dali because he's weird. And once he was just getting exceedingly close to a Dali painting at the Art Institute, and he got in trouble. And I just moved away. Okay, go ahead and get your reading questions out.
Guys,
Yes.
are you allowed to touch or walk in any of the ancient ruins?
Yes and no. So there's a library that the Roman Emperor Hadrian built, and it actually, you can still see the mosaics on the floor, and they have those cordoned off, but you can walk through where the foundations of the library. You can walk through the paths of the agora. So some of it they let you walk on, but you know, I understand because people aren't very nice. And when you give certain people access to things, they will chip bits off, or they will scratch their name on it, or they will paint things on it. If we all just behaved ourselves, things like this maybe could be open, but we don't all behave ourselves. And so this is their national treasure, and they're trying to protect it. So, but I do kind of wish that I could just hid myself from all of this touch. But I just can't. I follow rules too exceedingly. This week we read about two things, and the first one was the Olympic Games. And there's just a couple of questions over here, so you can see them.
If I made it all the way there and not finally there, I wouldn't know that I would pass out touching. Just like
I know.
here, like
It was hard, but I didn't want the whistle. Yes.
Do I need to give you my paper?
Oh yes. Is this from this last week?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Is there anybody else who has a paper that I should have? The first question I asked you was, why did Greeks value physical fitness so highly? Why are they working out all the time? What do you think, Jesse?
because they're all in other cities.
Okay, yes. This goes along with what we talked about last week, and also the second half of your reading. These city-states did not get along with each other. You were constantly at war. And they didn't have an army that they paid, what we call a standing army, where they just get paid to sit around and wait until you need them. America has a standing army. But they did not. It was, like the beginning of Mulan, if you're familiar with, I only know the animated one. Sometimes they changed anything in the other one.
Yeah.
That's a subject I've spent half our time ranting on, so I won't go there. But at the beginning of Mulan, they come and they tell her dad, get your armor and your sword, you're going to war. Because that's what they did. They just went through the countryside, they went through the town, they did this in Greece, and just said, we're going to war, all you guys, grab your weapon, get your arm, whatever you got, so you don't get killed, bring it. And we're heading out to war. And you didn't know when this was going to happen, but it happens a lot. So you better work out, right? You better be in good physical condition. Also, I thought this was really interesting because I feel like not we in this room, but we in modern times, don't care so much about things being beautiful. I don't know if you would agree with that or not. We like things to be useful. And I'm just gonna, I shouldn't do this. So, like, this church is a very nice building, but it's not beautiful. It kind of looks like a store or a warehouse. But in the Middle Ages, they built churches that were beautiful. They didn't care about it being functional so much as being beautiful and glorifying God. And I'm not saying the people who built this church are bad. Please don't get me wrong. It's just, it's not important to us that things be beautiful. I've not seen the sanctuary, although my husband is an engineer and apparently redid a beam in the sanctuary. And he keeps saying, did you go see it? I'm like, no, it's locked. They won't let me in. I can't see your beam. So maybe it is quite lovely. But often we have, and not even churches, just other buildings, we kind of build them to be useful, functional, we would say, instead of beautiful. Yeah.
Maybe like other people say that. Like not everyone's tastes are the same.
This is true, but that takes us into another, which I would love to visit someday, is beauty really just in the eye of the beholder, or is there a standard of beauty? Is there an actual standard outside of us? I would like to pursue that someday, but.
I feel like our standard is just.
Our standard is kind of low. Yes, one more comment.
Maybe it's like the beam is the only.
Maybe. So it says, she tells us that they thought to run gracefully was as important to run swiftly. They cared so much for the grace of movement that they did not lay much stress on record breaking. See, we're all about breaking records, right? No, they kept no records of exceptional athletic feats, which prevents us from knowing details of their great athletic achievements. They were concerned with whether you were beautiful when you did it. Now, I guess figure skating is a little bit like that, right? I mean, there's standards, sort of the beauty of the form. I'm going to figure skating because I'm thinking of modern Olympic events, where you're judging the beauty of something, which is harder to do, right? It's easier to just start a stopwatch and say you were fastest, you win. It's harder to judge, oh, but you looked so graceful as you spun around on your skates, you win. That's a little more subjective, we would say. The Greeks thought that beauty was important, which leads us to an issue that always just makes us giggle a little bit. They exercised without clothes on, and they did their sporting events without clothes on. I was like, wow, just might as well know this.
That's how the girls were.
That's why the girls were allowed. But if you think about it, and I'm not saying we should do this. Do not go home and say Mrs. Ferguson said it would be better. Mrs. Ferguson did not say that at all. We have also a standard of modesty that requires us to not do that. However, and I am not saying bad things about these people, I just noticed this. What do people wear when they go jogging down the street? The most skin-tight legging things that you can possibly find, and just the tightest clothes. Why? Because if I try to do something in this, it's going to get in my way, right? So you wear tight clothing, so it's like you wear tight clothing or no clothing. And if you wear no clothing, you don't have to do any laundry later. I feel like that. You don't have a washing machine. I don't really know that was the motivation. But it always occurs to me, it's like, yeah, we could just work out and then our clothes are steamy bloody clothes. We didn't be there anymore. But no, I did not say this was a good idea, so do not try this at home.
Yeah.
At all. Second question. What did the most important Greek athletic competitions honor? I should say, who, I guess, would be a better way. Who were they having these athletic events for?
Zeus.
Yeah, Zeus or other gods. Right? I call them what? So I just showed you the temple at Delphi for Apollo. And I told you up at the very top, they had a race course. They had sporting events in honor of Apollo. They had sporting events in honor of Poseidon. But the big one was for Zeus, right?
Yeah.
The big one was for Zeus in Olympia. And so do you, I'm just going to tell you, instead of asking if you know. In Olympia, there was an enormous temple to Zeus. And even more impressive, inside the temple, there was a statue of Zeus. Oh, she told you about this.
Yeah.
Right? She told you about this amazing statue. The god is seated on a throne. He is made of gold and ivory. On his head is a wreath made in imitation of the sprays of olive. In his right hand, he carries a victory. A victory is a short little winged person. It's the goddess Nike, goddess of victory. And yes, Nike means victory. That's why they call the shoes and the sporting goods that. Okay, so he's holding a Nike. Also of ivory and gold. She wears a ribbon and on her head is a wreath. In the left hand of the god is a scepter wrought in all the metals. A bird perched on the scepter is an eagle. He's Zeus's special bird. The sandals of the god are gold. So is his robe. On the robe are wrought figures of animals and lily flowers. The throne is adorned with gold and precious stones. Do you hear how many golds I'm saying? With ebony and ivory, and there are figures painted and images wrought on it. This statue is amazing. It was by one of the sculptors of Greece that we know his name. His name is Phidias, and he also did an amazing statue of Athena that we're going to talk about later this year. That was in Athens. Where is the statue today? Gone, largely because if you cover something with gold, people come along later and say, "Ooh, look at the gold. I will take it and use it for something else." But in its day, because it's just not being used, you know, I might as well. But in its day, it was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. It's the temple of Zeus at Olympia. It's one of the 7. Yes, Jesse first. I don't know why. I don't know who was first, but I'm sure.
Did you get to see this?
We did not go to Olympia, and the statue is gone.
Wait, Zeus?
Yes, Zeus is gone.
I wonder if, like,
Not only the gold, I should make that clear. Not only the gold is gone, Zeus is gone. No statue.
just to make it
I
like-
watched that.
No, not just a naked Zeus. It's gone. Yes.
I wonder, like, if you had a piece of gold or something, and like no one ever knew, but it was like a piece from the statue.
That'd be
So it's
awesome.
Like,
It'd be like getting a brick from something they tore down, only
yeah.
possibly, you know, expensively.
I wonder, like, just-
I doubt anybody was just I don't feel like souvenir hunting was a big ancient
Right,
world
I just
thing.
mean like it got melted down and this and that,
I-
and I was just in
It would be very hard to prove.
I know, you couldn't put much,
No.
there's,
You could just
That
believe
is
it
the-
yourself. It just makes you feel better to believe it yourself.
Like
That
wearing
would be
that
interesting.
every day. That's not that where this is from.
So people would go to Olympia and, okay, did I ask this? No. How often? And you can use the modern Olympics as how often do they have the Olympics? This is kind of a trick question. They don't have it once a year. How often do they have it today, Dalton?
Once every 4 years.
Once every 4 years, which I have a set of things that bother me, and I always say when I'm queen of the world, I'm abolishing it.
Like the
This is
summer.
one of those things. Yeah, see, this is the thing. No, when I'm queen, every 4 years. Like, I'm sorry, there's no winter, summer, just boom. But I will never be queen, so this will never happen. So the world is safe. But every 4 years. So technically we do have it every 4 years because the summer one is every 4 years and the winter, but I think the whole thing should be. I don't know why I get so worked up about petty things, but I really do.
It's technically every 2 years.
It's technically every 2 years, but we'll get every 4 years because the summer is every 4. It's the same in the ancient world. And can you turn, okay, in the back of your reading guide, there are your timelines. Remember those timelines? And I want you to go to the one that's on page 71. Oh, we need to get rid of the quotation. And so you should have a timeline that says 1000 BC at the top, and 500 BC at the bottom. Does everybody see this?
Mhm.
Have you found this page? The very first Olympics we know of, the very first Olympics in Greece, were in 776 BC. So where on this line, roughly, would I put 776? Closer to this, or more in the middle?
Closer to the 500.
In the middle of the middle of the
Okay,
top.
so what would be the middle? It's like, oh, this isn't math. Why are you making this too?
It's gonna be closer to 1,000 BC.
750 would be the
Okay.
middle. So it's a little closer to the 1,000, right? 776 is closer than 750. So put a line just slightly above middle, and I want you to label it 776 Olympic Games. So we're going to come back to this this timeline later, and we're going to add some more things, and you're going to see some interesting things that were happening at the same time. I feel like my hair is getting over my microphone, and I don't know where to put it on this dress. Just do that. We got that? Okay. So, who could compete in the ancient Olympic Games? This is your next question. All right, Jesse. I'm just gonna give other people a chance.
Only like pure-blooded Greeks, like only people specifically born in Greece, brought in Greece, ancestors from Greece.
Yes. Number one, you have to be Greek. Now, so I'm gonna, you people from last year know that I'm fond of having a map, an imaginary map, so you just have to bear with me. So here's Greece, you know, and here's Italy, and here's Turkey sticking up. But Greeks had moved. There were Greeks living in Turkey. There were Greeks living in southern Italy. There were Greeks living in North Africa. They were all allowed to come because they were Greek. Does that make sense? So you didn't have to live in Greece, but you had to be of Greek ancestry. So there was a guy, I'm sure you know him, Alexander the Great. He was from Macedonia, which was just north of Greece, and he wanted to compete in the Olympic Games. And there was some, are Macedonians Greek? I don't know. But he was Alexander the Great. So they found a way to declare that Macedonians were Greek. Whether that was legit or not, I don't know. So number one, you must be Greek. What's another restriction? Who can come? We already talked about this once. Right. You had to be a man. No women. These guys are not wearing clothes. And it just wasn't considered proper for women to go hanging out. Because this was not just a sporting event. This was, like, if you wrote a book or some poetry, you might set up a tent and just give public readings of your poetry or your book at the Olympic Games. If you were a craftsman, you might bring stuff. It was like a sporting event combined with the state fair or something like that. And it just wasn't considered proper for women to mingle so much in public in their society. So no women. Can you think of another restriction?
Also, you have to have not gotten like in trouble.
No criminal record.
Yeah.
No criminal record. So obviously today, people come from all over the world to be in the Olympic Games, women and men. And I don't know that there are background checks. I don't know that they're not, but I don't think there are. I'm sorry, I still don't have my clock, guys, so I'm going to have to periodically. Do you know that for many years, many centuries, there were no Olympic Games? Are you familiar with why they stopped and why they started again? Do you think you know?
Was it because Greece fell?
It's not because Greece fell, interestingly. It was Christianity. Christianity shut down the Olympic Games because remember what they are. This is not a sporting event. It's like if going to a football game were the same as going to church. I don't even know what that would look like.
Well,
Like at halftime, there's a sermon, and then I don't know, every first down you sing a hymn. I don't even know what that would look like.
well,
But
they probably shut down because Olympic Games were worshiping at Zeus.
Yes, that's the thing. Because it was worshiping Zeus, Jupiter, the first Christian emperor did not shut it down, but I think it was under Justinian. In about the year 500, we'll say, AD, they said, we're not doing that anymore. They also shut down the school of philosophy in Athens that had started with Plato because of the pagan influence. But in 1896, if I remember correctly, don't quote me on that, they decided it would be a cool thing to start it up again, to have Olympic Games again in the modern world.
But this time it's not to worship Jesus.
But this time it doesn't have any religious significance at all. But I also think it's kind of interesting. This just occurred to me yesterday, and I'll have to look into it, because I don't know if there's a connection. But the original Olympic Games, we talked about these city-states fighting with each other all the time. And they went to one of the oracles, and they said, how do we stop fighting all the time? I don't feel like you need an oracle today. But anyway, how do we stop fighting all the time? And they said, they got the answer that you should set up a sporting event in honor of Zeus and declare a truce during it. So picture this. Maybe I'm one of these Greeks that lives in Asia Minor, Turkey, or North Africa, or Italy. I have to travel to Olympia by foot, by boat. It's going to take me a while. So they had a truce for months before and months after the event, just so people could travel. It was very bad form to attack someone traveling to go compete. So basically, war shut down for the Olympic Games. And it was just, very rarely did some violent event take place during the Olympic period, because it was just so frowned on. It was just considered sacrilege to attack people. So at least it didn't solve the fighting problem, but it gave them breaks. So yesterday I was saying this, and I said 1896, and I thought, Europe in turmoil, they're 20 years away from World War I. Was there anyone who thought we should start this up for the same reason? Like maybe it will bring peace and harmony among nations to come? I don't know. I'm just speculating, but I think it's really interesting that we're on the edge of World War and revolution in Russia, and somebody says we should all get together and have a sporting event, and then we'll be like friends, There's camaraderie in playing a game together.
Wait, wasn't the war in Ukraine going on during the Winter Olympics?
Yeah, I guess sometimes they've canceled. Sometimes they've countries have said we won't come because something bad is going on in the world. They do not stop all wars for the modern Olympic Games. Unfortunately, that would be nice. So this was really important to them. And so this number 776, this is really the oldest historical date we know in Greek history. And also it's their year one. They dated things from the Olympic Games. But what they did is they dated it in sets of 4 years. Every set of 4 years, you don't have to write this down, but it's called an Olympiad. So an Olympiad is 4 years. So the first Olympiad would be from 776 to 772 BC. And they would, when they write public records, they would say, and he ruled in the 23rd Olympiad, or something like that. They dated, this was where they dated the time from. And I think it's interesting. So where do we date our time from?
Jesus' birth.
Birth of Jesus. 2022 years, give or take, 4 BC, 2 BC, whatever, but close enough. That's what we're marking it by. And it says we think that is important. That is such an important event that it's how we record time. So imagine how important they found this if that's how they record their time. By Olympiads. This was the center of their lives, this cycle of Olympiads. They had not some of the events that we have today, obviously, but some of them should have sounded familiar to you. Somebody tell me the 5 pentathlon events? Give me one.
Okay, this is,
Discus throwing. Give me another one. Somebody else. Red.
Throwing the spear.
Spear. Give me another one. Somebody else. Not these guys. Matthias. And then you get next one. Running.
You wrestling one?
Wrestling. And I do remember the last one.
jumping.
Jumping. Okay. All of which we throw things. We don't throw discus. There's no discus. We do throw things though. Shot put, right? We throw a really heavy ball, but a discus, is like a big frisbee. Only I was thinking about this. I was driving around on the weekend for no reason, thinking, what did they make the discus out of? And I guess I never really thought about metal. I'm assuming, not stone. That would be concrete. But so I'm assuming it's a big metal disc. And instead of the graceful frisbee throw, you probably all seen this. You tuck it in your arm and you spin around, which I'm not going to try to do because that would be disastrous. Spin around and around, and then just fling it with all your might, and whoever flings it farthest wins. Throwing the spear and running and jumping we don't throw spears. We run and we jump today.
Don't we throw javelins still?
Do we still travel?
Yeah.
I don't watch this because see, I'm a conscientious objector because of the whole summer-winter thing. And I'm boycotting. I don't usually watch. Yes.
So is it like, do they throw it in any direction, or is it just?
Oh, no, it's a set course so that they can measure it. Now, because that would be dangerous to the spectators.
I was just gonna say, hit the crowd.
There's actually a story, I won't tell you which story it's in, that way you can look for it, but in the Greek myths book, there's a story about the throwing of a discus that kills a spectator. And I will only leave it at that, and then you can be on the lookout for that. One of the so the pentathlon's like the Ironman or something. You have to win 3, I think she said 3 out of the 5 events to be the Ironman pentathlon winner. And winning was a big deal. No cash prize. Not even the gold, bronze, silver medals. I'm sorry. But incredible honor. So you get the laurel wreath, but then you go home and everybody thinks you are awesome for the rest of your life, which kind of is true today, although fame doesn't last as long today as it used to. In Athens, they even let you eat basically what was the public cafeteria for life, for free. We will feed you for free.
Probably.
And, not today people get endorsements, like they get contracts to sell shoes and stuff if they win, but they eat for free. Everybody who passes them on the road thinks they're amazing, honored for life. And there was a famous poet named Pindar, and you could hire him for a pretty hefty fee to make a poem about you. We have a Pindaric ode, and they celebrate mostly victors at the Olympic Games. Okay, yes, right.
Probably because you're the best fighter. I don't know, you're the strongest.
Yeah, you're the strongest. And remember, they're heroes. The heroes in their stories are the strongest and the best. And so they really very highly valued physical prowess, physical fitness. Yes.
I wonder what would have happened if you had caught the discus.
Like a baseball?
When they catch the baseball.
No, you're dead before you catch the discus. You're just dead.
Never mind.
Oh, I'm sorry, did somebody else say that?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry. So one of the non-pentathlon events, but another event, was boxing. And I just wanted to bring this up. I brought this picture actually for the high schoolers because of something they read this week, but I just thought it would do double duty today. This is a statue. It's a fairly late statue. It's from maybe the 200s BC, something like that. And it's got a lot of names. Sometimes it's just called the boxer. Sometimes it's called the boxer at rest. Sometimes it's called the defeated boxer. This guy, I'm not gonna pass it around for time constraints, but I'll leave it up here after. His hands are wrapped in leather thongs. So you don't have those big poofy boxing gloves. And basically you wrap your hands in leather thongs so you don't hurt your knuckles. Not so you don't hurt the other guy. And this poor guy, his ear has been smashed in repeatedly. His nose has obviously been broken multiple times. And you can't really see it in this picture, but I looked this up in an art book. And it said that the bronze on his forehead has cracks in it that they inlaid with copper to make it look like gashes of blood. That's really cool. And so he's sitting here, and I guess they call him defeated because he looks like he's just sitting there staring at his opponent. Oh, I'm never doing this again. I'm so tired of it. I have been beat to a pulp. And there's a famous Roman poem. We're going to read a retelling of it next semester, but the high school kids are reading it right now. And this is why I brought this. They have a sporting event in this poem, and the guy who's holding the event says, "Well, I'm going to give this ox to whoever wins the boxing match." And this young guy gets up and he's just ready, like anybody would take me because I'm really good. And he's like, "Oh, we're scared of you." And then they nudge this old guy and tell us, "You used to be really good. You should do it." I was like, "Yeah, kind of old and tired. I got arthritis, the joints hurt. But let me show you what it used to be like back in my day." And he throws, apparently at this point, it is a huge boxing glove, huge gloves. It's like, "Yeah, back when we used to fight with Hercules and the rest of it, we used these." And the whole crowd goes, "Whoa." So he gets up and he's, he's old and stiff, so he doesn't have the agility, the footwork. So he swings, and he swings so hard he falls down, which is humiliating. Right? So he's like, "Oh man, I gotta pummel this guy now because I look bad." And he gets up and he just beats the living daylights out of the other guy. He just wails on him, the young guy. And finally the guy hosting the event says, "Okay, so until us we see you're good, let me stop before he dies. Let me just stop. Here's the ox, you win." And he says, "Well, just so you see how good I used to be, let's show you what you just saved that guy from." And I kid you not, he goes up to the ox and he just punches it right between the eyes, and the ox falls down dead. This is my favorite. I don't know why. It's like, what? That's so random. He punched an ox between the eyes of the ox. Anyway, boxing was brutal. Like, it's more like what we think of street fighting, okay? Where we don't care where you punch them. There's no below the belt, no rules. Just take them down. Just pummel them and take them down. And it was mean. So that statue kind of shows you a little bit of what these guys, the ones that lived, went through. So that is the sporting events, particularly the Olympic Games. I would like to turn now to the second chapter that you read and talk about the city-state. And so last week, I told you, we talked, but actually let me ask you guys, why did cities develop in Greece independent of each other and not really connected and mountains separated them? Geography, tough journey. So you get these cities all over Greece, and it's as if Davenport were its own country.
Wait, that's how small it was?
Oh yeah, Davenport was probably a pretty big one. And then Peoria was its own country, and Moline was its own country. I mean, with its own rulers and laws and money and everything, it would be confusing.
How about with its own content?
What?
Chicago.
Oh.
Well,
We'll get into whether we think Chicago should be not part of Illinois. So they refer to these as city-state, and they usually hyphenate it like that because on the one hand, and I don't mean this state like Iowa or Illinois, I mean country. It's like its own country. And the word for this in Greek is polis. A polis. And can you think of an English word that sounds like polis that has to do with government? But see, somebody said that yesterday. I forgot to look it up. I don't know about police. Like what? See, this is the next thing somebody said yesterday. Somebody said the North Pole. I don't think about the North Pole I don't know about police. Do you have another idea? Politics, is that what you're gonna say? Oh, let it
I
go.
was thinking like, polls, like, taking.
Oh, taking the polls. I don't think so. But I don't, see, I just don't think so. I don't know for sure. Politics and political, I do know comes from this word. Because everybody in an ancient Greek city was expected to take part. You were a super slacker if you did not take part in the government in whatever way it was given you to take part. You know, so in America, we all can vote, obviously. And they talk about, whenever there's an election, they'll often say things like, when the polling numbers were 42%, whatever, the percent of people who could vote, who showed up to vote. And often it's less than half of the people who are registered to vote in an area, they don't actually go and vote. The Greeks would have thought you were the biggest slacker, terrible, you might as well just be thrown out of the city if you won't show up and do your duty. Politics was very important because this was their whole life. This was the place. And I think that's the last question I asked you, wasn't it? If you were an ancient Greek citizen, which would be more important to you, the country of Greece or your city? Your city. I am a Theban. I am Corinthian. I am Athenian. I am Spartan. Not so much I am a Hellene, right? The Greek, yes.
I bet they had some pride though, that they were like, I'm part of this great country. Just
They did.
Like,
They did. And as a matter of fact, everybody who wasn't Greek was a barbarian. And so we use the term barbarian to mean, I don't know, like they're eating raw meat and barbarian. Like caveman, yes, barbarian. But they just meant anybody who wasn't Greek. The rest, because the world was divided into the Greek people and all the rest. It's very much, the world was divided for Jews, right? The Jews and all the Gentiles, the countries. They felt the same way. So there was definite pride in that. The story is that they call people barbarians. I don't know if it's a true story or not. Because everyone else's language sounded so stupid to them. It sounded like they were just going bar, 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 and so they're barbarians. That's what they say. It's a good story, isn't it? It should be true.
It's not how you say that, that's all, just happen.
So there was definite pride, but there was even more pride in being a part of your particular city-state. And I marked a couple of things I wanted to mention. I found this very interesting. Before I launch into it, I gotta check and see what time it is. Oh, let's just get rid of this. She says, all communities are always governed in one of three ways. Either by one man, by a few men, or by many men. Now, I just want to take a moment to say that in old books, particularly when they use the word man, they just mean people. It's never a slight to women. This whole thing about, that's another thing that when I'm queen, you know, we're going to do something about that. But in the ancient world, they really do mean men. There were very few ancient female rulers. So what do we call it if one person rules you? What is it? A king. He is a king. And do you know what we call that form of government? When a king, what do we call it? That's okay. What do you think, John? A monarchy. Mono means one, and archon is what they call their ruler. Literally, it means one ruler. What do we call it when many, many people rule? A democracy. Beautiful. Kratos actually means rule over, and the deme is the common people. So the rule over by the common people. Do you know what we call the few?
I can't remember what hierarchy is, but That's-
Hierarchy? No, hierarchy is just a system where some people are more important than others. Bureaucracy, see, that's a government where you just have lots of departments. So you could be any of these and still have a bureaucracy. See, notice how many bureaucracies there are because I will tell you, I'm not sure if it's good. We call this sometimes by two names, an oligarchy.
I remember learning about this.
You learn about oligarchy. Sometimes we call it an aristocracy, an aristocratic. And oligos just means few in Greek. It just means rule of the few. And the idea is that you choose the best people, the wisest and the best and the smartest people, and it's better to be ruled by them. Because this upside, you can get a lot done fast because only one guy makes decisions. Downside, tell me a downside. What?
We have a horrible guy right now.
Maybe I have a horrible guy.
Okay.
He might just be a jerk. And he might be mean. Think some of the worst Roman emperors. Okay, we're not going to talk about it. Because we do not have a monarchy. However you might feel about our president, he can do very little by himself. No president can do much by himself. Okay, so upside, what's the upside of democracy? What's the good?
There'll be more unbiased decisions.
Okay, presumably we get lots of voices and we come to a better decision. Also, everybody feels like they had a say. Nobody's pushing them around. What's the downside?
Can't get things done as fast.
Well, is that what you were going to say? Or do you have another one? Nothing gets done. Okay. And okay, so I'm just going to throw this in. People, this is like, somebody said this, I don't remember the quote's from, I don't remember the quote exactly. But a person by himself often is a decent sort, but people in a mob don't behave well. We've seen this over the last few years, if you watch any news. When people get together, peer pressure, or just like the frenzy that people get worked up into, they make stupid decisions. And I think I told you last week that Athens, that had a pure democracy, once upon a time decided to murder all the people in a town because the town rebelled from them. They voted to murder everyone in the town, and they sent a vote to do it. But then the next day they got up and they said, oh, we feel bad. We probably shouldn't murder all those people. Let's vote again and send another vote. And it is only by the grace of God the second vote got there first, before they killed everyone. They make stupid decisions, like on the fly. So the upside of an oligarchy is presumably we're going to have people who are smart. They're going to choose the wisest and the best, and they will make better decisions. But of course, the bad side is that these few people that get to be powerful often just end up the people who are the richest. Because they have power. You know, they have clout. They have good friends. They have the right friends. You know what I mean? So I mean, there's no right way to rule a country, and there's no wrong way. It kind of depends on who the people are. Yeah. What? Oh yes, please go ahead. But everybody chooses one of these, or a combination, because you know, like in England, they have a monarch, but they also have a parliament. That's the few, right? So, and nowadays the monarch, Queen Elizabeth II, doesn't have a lot to do with the government, it's more parliament. But once upon a time in England, they were really had to work together. We vote, we all get a vote, but we vote for a few people, right? The people in the Senate and the House of Representatives. So you can mix it up. You know, it doesn't have to be purely one or purely the other. But everybody chooses one of these. And in Greece, they did them all at various times. They experimented with all of them, which is why studying Greece and then Rome, like next semester we will, is so amazing for politics. It's so amazing for American history because the people who put together our Constitution knew all of this. They had examined every form of government in the ancient world, what made it good, what made it bad, what made it fail. And they put together what they thought would be the best of all possible worlds, the best of all possible combinations. They knew all about this. But so Dorothy Mills goes on and she says, I'm just going to choose one. I'm going to choose Athens. Let's look at Athens and Aristotle, who lived in Athens. What did Aristotle, the philosopher, say was the best kind of state? Listen to this. He believed that the end for which the state existed was that all its citizens could lead what he called a good life. And by that, he meant the life which best gives opportunities for man to develop his highest instincts, and which makes it possible for every citizen to develop his own gifts, whatever they may be, in the highest and truest way. And you know, I read that, and here's what I thought. They are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Where is that from? It's the Declaration of Independence. They're saying what Aristotle said. What is a government for? So people can live out their lives, and by good life, or the pursuit of happiness, neither Aristotle nor Thomas Jefferson meant have parties every weekend. That is not the good life. That is not the pursuit of happiness. It means the opportunity to pursue your calling, to grow in virtue, to be the best you that you were created to be. That's what a government is there for, to clear the path so you can do that. And Aristotle said the same thing. Thomas Jefferson didn't make it up. He knew this already. Aristotle always also said, and this goes back to what you're talking about, it being small. We don't want a big city-state. Why? He says the character of all the citizens should be well known. How else can men elect their magistrates wisely? Think about it. Well, I'll just tell you my personal experience. So back in the dark ages of 1984 was the first election that I was 18, you know what I mean? I was able to vote for president. And in all those years since then, I have never personally known someone I voted for. Whether for local government or state government, I've never known them. I only know what the literature about them says or the commercials say. I don't know them. They could be totally rotten. I've never even known someone who knew them because it's just too big. This was a problem, you know, in early America, and when they were trying to get people to vote yes for the Constitution, some of the founding fathers said, this country is too big for that. We're just going to be so spread out, we're never going to know the people we vote for. And then the other side answered, but we'll have local government, and the people who are in the state government will come home and they will tell their neighbors about this person or that person. Word of mouth, it'll get around. But when it's big, it's really hard to know who's ruling you, right? And if you live in I live in Orion, if you live in a small town, you meet people you know on a regular basis on the street, and you know a lot of what's going on. So that's why he thought it was better to be small. So we are going, next week, you are going to read chapter 5 in the Dorothy Mills book. And it's all about Sparta. We're going to look at how Sparta, one city-state, a very important city-state in Greek history, was set up. And what kind of government they chose and how it worked. Does anybody have when I say Sparta, does something come to your mind or an image? What do you think, Matthew? Okay, it's the same thing they said yesterday. It's just deja vu. Yes, cool helmets, Matthias.
The warriors.
Warriors, are you going to say warriors?
I think muscles.
Muscles, okay. Yes, again, Matthias.
Death.
Death, okay, yes. You have a good idea. Muscles, weapons,
Muscles, death,
war,
word,
death. This goes well to Sparta. And now if you don't know about Sparta, I gotta go home and read about Sparta right away. Yeah, they're the warrior culture. So we'll read about them next week. Now I'm gonna stop and talk about your papers. Now, I had a call from someone this week. It was not one of you. It was one of your compatriots in a different class. And this person was very, very much struggling with doing the outline on their own. And I don't want anyone struggling. So I know it's very hard to be brave, but is there anybody here who found doing one of these outlines on your own really hard? Please be honest. Like, I'm the doctor. You have to tell me where it hurts. I can't help it. Okay? If I were to give you another assignment like that, is everyone okay with doing that? Please. I mean, seriously, I beg you to speak up, because I only get you this 1 hour and a half every week, and then I don't want anyone ever going home and just being upset over their homework and not knowing what to do. So are we all agreeing? Because if anybody wants me to, I will do another one of these together on the board with you. All right. We're good? If I don't do that, then we just, okay. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to do exactly the same thing we've done. You don't have to write this down because it's in your book already in week 1, you know, the outline. But remember, I want you to make an outline that looks exactly like the one in your book. You can copy this down on a blank page if you want to, but it's already in week 1, you know, the outline we used. So you don't have to, you can just look there. But it's gonna look like this. You should start, I always start low because I'm so short, and then I get down to the bottom. And you're going to choose any story you want from the Greek myths. Any story you want. Don't care. And you might be wondering, how long are we going to do these stories? Because if you're not loving it, we're going to do one more after it. We're going to do one more next week, but next week's is going to have a twist that gives you a lot of leeway and creativity. Okay? So this is super easy and it's kind of boring. Just hold on. Next week's assignment, you're just going to let it rip. All right? You're just going to go for it. And then we're going to move on to working on something else. So remember, you're going to pick a story. And you are going to ask yourself questions. In the first paragraph, you're just going to say, who is in the story? When do they live? Where do they live? And what are they like? What like? I don't know if those are the same questions for this one. All right. So if I were to pick Arachne, you know, obviously we have Arachne in the story. She's a Greek lady, and she's kind of full of herself.
I'm choosing the shortest story.
Yes, and Arachne is also a really short story if you're looking. And Athena is also in this story, right? And then in the second paragraph, I ask myself, what do they want? Or just what happens, you know? So obviously in the story of Arachne, we have Arachne weaving and having people come in and watch her because she's so awesome, and then she just disses Athena to everybody, and this old lady says, you should not diss the gods like that. It's like, oh, you're just an old lady, you don't know anything. And then of course, the old lady becomes Athena and says, oh yeah? We'll see. All right, so she gets challenged to a contest. That's what happens. And then the third paragraph, how does it turn out? Or is there a moral, you know? And so obviously in the case of Arachne, we have the contest, and they're both furiously weaving, and Arachne is weaving these insulting pictures about the gods and boasting right there with Athena next to her. And of course, Athena says, oh yeah, you want to weave? Boom. Weave forever, girl. And she's a spider now, weaving webs forever. As the moral is, what moral is don't diss the gods. The moral is don't be, pride is against pride. Does that make sense? So you just ask yourself and just jot down notes. Now, someone asked me a really good question yesterday. Well, can't I just read the story and write it?
Copyright.
Well, no, I mean not write it word for word, but just write a paraphrase and skip this step.
Is there school late here?
What?
Is there school late here on Tuesday?
No, I teach other classes, like in people's houses.
Oh.
I do the same thing. I have 2 sets of you and I have 4 sets of the high school people. I wander around with my bag and I knock on doors and I ask, can I talk about Greece? Will you let me know? Kind of I do, but the people who play guitar on the street, I should just put out a box and just start talking. I didn't do that. So the reason not to skip the outline is because this is practice for other forms of writing. We don't, it's like the next form of writing we're going to do is what you would call writing a report. Like about Greek clothing. I don't think that's the report we're writing, but a topic. Well, you can't just retell that, can you? You have to gather information from different sources and you've got to organize it somehow. And this is a tool for that. Or sometimes we're going to write papers where it asks our opinion of something. Should the Olympic Games happen every 2 years or every 4 years? And then you see, I have to organize my thoughts about that. It's not the same as just retelling a story. So yes, you guys are probably all completely capable of reading one of these stories and then just putting it in your own words. But I don't want you to skip this step because it teaches you to ask questions of your mind and organize ideas. Okay, does that make sense? All right, so we're good with this. So your second assignment of the week is any story out of the Greek myths whatsoever. Start with what?
Can we read it?
You can read. I don't care. And set up an outline. Ask yourself questions about the story, and then write it for me.
Can we write a story ahead? Is what we are.
Yeah, well, if you want to read ahead, yes. No, I'm not. No limits. Any story. Any story. I would also like you. I don't know how you did on your similes because I obviously haven't read your papers yet. But I would like everyone to include a simile somewhere in your paper. And if you remember, if you would be so good as to,
I forgot to do simile class on the go.
well, I will remind you. See, because I'm your reminder. Maybe you should write it down on your paper right now. Simile in paper. So this is my paragraph. It's the wrong sentence. And then right here is my simile. The pin stunk as bad as a skunk. All right, that's my simile. And then what I'm going to do on the edge of my paper is I'm just going to put a letter S right there. Right, this is the edge. This is that line that's on a piece of notebook paper, or that's your margin, okay? And then just go in later. If you print it on a computer, just go in with your pen. Just write an S. This will help me find it. So I don't accuse you of not giving me a simile. What were you thinking when you read my paper, Mrs. Ferguson? It will show me, yes, I did a simile. Does that make sense? No beatings if you forget, but it makes my life a lot easier, okay? So try to remember a simile. And because I do such a poor job of inventing similes, I brought in the law school's writing story sheet, just to give you some actually good ones from real people. I'm a real person, but writers who are better than I am. Here's one from the Book of Psalms. As the deer pants for the water brooks, so my soul pants for you, oh God. My soul pants after God like a deer running through the forest panting because it's thirsty and wants water. Here's one from Proverbs. Everybody loves this one. As a jewel of gold in a swine's snout, so is a pretty woman without discretion. A pretty girl who's a jerk is like a pig with a gold ring in her nose. It's not a compliment. Here's one from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Edmund saw the drop for a second in midair, shining like a diamond. I like that. They also give you, interestingly, a couple of student ones, because the student ones, no offense to any of us, I'm a student too. I'm still learning to do this better. Ours aren't as great writers, but here, the bird is as loud as a train.
It's a loud bird.
Sometimes birds are really loud. You know what we should say? The cicada is as loud as a train. Because those things are not normal. No thing that small should make a noise like that. And if you've ever picked one up and then it just went off on you,
It's so scary.
it's scary. Or my cat is as fluffy as a pillow. But your cat may
One
not
time
appreciate if you
my
lay.
dog caught a cicada and ate it.
Our dog went after a cicada once too, but it made that noise. You're going to nail it on your dog. Okay, so those are some better examples of similes than my lame examples. Try to give me another simile. Try to remember. And so you have 2 assignments so far. You're reading chapter 5 in your Dorothy Mills book and answering the questions. I'll let Sparta. You are outlining any story from the Greek myths book that you want and then retelling it for me with a simile. Let's talk about our third thing. Let's talk about our Greek myths. And so I noticed that the section you read this week talked a lot about, it talked about the creation of man. And it talked about how things went bad in the world. And so I wanted to read another story out of this book. And it's more about creation itself, about the ages of the world. So humor me and let me tell you the story, very brief. Now let's take a look at it. In the beginning, there was chaos. Out of that primal chaos was born the earth. Out of the earth was born the sky. And out of the fertile union of earth and sky was born Kronos and the race of Titans. It was during that time of Kronos that men first appeared upon the earth. What a glorious time that was for man and nature alike. For that was the golden age, when man was innocent and the earth yielded her crops without the need of plow or sickle. The earth gave freely of her produce without toil on the part of man, and men lived in harmony with nature, with the gods, and with one another. They lived long lives of peace and plenty. They feasted and sang songs, but never to excess. When death overtook them, it came like sleep on a quiet night. But those days did not last. The men of gold were buried under the earth, and they were succeeded in the time of Zeus, son of Kronos, by a race of silver. It was in that age that the 4 seasons began. Before that time, man and nature lived together in a perpetual spring. But with the age of silver, death and corruption began to appear on the earth. For 100 years, each human child would be innocent and kindly, but when it came of age, it waxed wild and impulsive, and neither paid heed to the gods, nor practiced virtue. In time, the race of silver too died away and was buried under the earth, to be born by a third and lesser race, which ushered in the age of bronze. The men who lived in that age had their honor and their glory, but they were fierce and violent and slew one another in battles of every kind. They sported long ashen spears with tips of bronze that tore the flesh of their enemies. Their days and nights were spent in strife and discord, and they brought great harm to the land and to each other. When that race too disappeared, it was followed by a 4th and final age, the age in which we are all forced to live, the age of iron. It was in that age, our own age, that men built ships and sailed the seas in search of treasures that they did not need. They dug under the earth as well for precious minerals that they coveted, and over which they quarreled bitterly. They laid waste much of their world. Slowly they forgot about pity and shame. They no longer obeyed their parents or respected the sacred bond of guest and host. They even refused to pay due reverence to the gods. They spoke to one another in lying and deceptive words, and they honored those who were powerful rather than those who were just. That is a summary of the Greek version of the beginning of the world and the first pages of the world. And did you notice anything? Is the world getting better or worse?
Worse. There's more blood and more death, which is
Much worse. Much worse. For the Greeks, the world started out perfect. Everything just grew by itself. It was marvelous. But then something happened. And it became worse and worse and worse. You know, the Greeks aren't the only ancient people that have an idea that it used to be better once upon a time and things are getting worse. But think about the way we live today. Do you think, kind of led you into this, do you think people in general think we're getting worse, or do you think that things will just get better and better? Things will get better and better. You know, we will invent new cures for diseases, and we will have new technology that will enable us to do this and that. And if you think about the whole concept of evolution, right? People were once, they were our friends the barbarians, right? Except even worse. And they lived in caves, so we have these cavemen that can barely talk. And slowly, over time, we get better and better and better. That's what today teaches us. But the wisdom of the ancient world said, no, once it was really good, and we are getting worse and worse and worse. You know, I'm going to guesstimate the year, but probably about somewhere from 900 to 950 BC, Solomon said, there is nothing new under the sun. Almost 3,000, about 3,000 years ago. Nothing new. We're not getting better. We're just rehashing the same old garbage. We hate each other, we cheat, we lie, we steal. Hopefully not we in this room, but we human beings, okay? We fight each other. This is a really good intro to Sparta, I guess, for next week. And again, I stand amazed because the Greeks knew the truth better than the modern world does. Because what does it tell us in the book of Genesis? In the beginning, it was very good. It's perfect. It's perfect. We're getting worse. You know, another thing that bothers me that I will ban, we will burn all these books when I'm queen, is the whole, how the ancient people were too stupid to build the pyramids or Stonehenge or whatever, and so aliens must have helped them. Maybe you've heard that, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Or, you know, like music lifted the rocks, which I don't know if it could be a thing. I don't know everything. Music could move rocks, I don't know. Like, but they didn't, they were brilliant engineers. These people were smart. We just happen to have gadgets. That's all we have, gadgets. Right? They were brilliant. They were closer to the beginning. I firmly believe this is Mrs. Ferguson's opinion, and this is not, you can take it or leave it. But my opinion is we're mentally just getting worse and worse. And then the closer we are to creation, you know, the closer people were to Adam and Eve, to perfection, the smarter they were. And then that every generation that goes by, we just get dumber and dumber. We just have gadgets. There's an Egyptian story about the guy who invented writing. And he brought it to the god, and the god said, what do you think my invention? He thinks, I think your invention stinks. Because now people won't have to remember it. Now, I love writing. Don't get me wrong, I'm so glad there's writing, because I have a bajillion books in my house. But it doesn't mean I don't have to think so hard and I can just look it up, right? And this makes it even easier to look things up. And I'm not condemning looking things up. I'm just saying we seem to need more help. And we read about people in the past who could memorize
Bible.
The entire Iliad, memorized half the Bible. Because you didn't have your own Bible, right? They were expensive for crying out loud. You couldn't afford a Bible, and maybe you didn't know how to read. You memorized it. It's amazing to me. Yes.
Did you say read pages you would read off?
I did not, but since you asked, I will tell you. We are, and then we're going to talk about some of the other stories you read. I would like you to read 124 through 189. So you can just go ahead and write that down and you'll be done with that. Do not confuse this with 900 to 950, because there are not 900 pages in your book. 124 to 189. Look at the text. This is Ferguson, I can't find page 900. Okay, so another story we read was about the creation of man, right? Epimetheus and Prometheus. So here's a fun fact about their names. Okay, let's start with Prometheus. Two brothers. Prometheus means forethought, looking ahead, right? Having a plan. Epimetheus, on the other hand, means no foresight, not looking ahead, complete ditz, all right? Epimetheus, don't say, Epimetheus is not equal to the word complete ditz, but Epimetheus means no foresight. So Epimetheus is given the job to give gifts to all the creatures. So he goes around and he gives speed to some of them, like rabbits and cheetahs, and he gives nice warm coats to bears and, you know, dogs, and flight to birds, and he's just given presents left and right. And then and there's one creature left, and it's human beings. Go ahead.
Isn't that like Prometheus' favorite one?
What?
Isn't that Prometheus' favorite one?
Yes, it turned out to be his favorite one, definitely. But it started out because his brother was stupid, all right, and he gave away all the gifts. And he went to his brother, was like, I don't know what to do with this thing. I already gave speed, I gave warm clothes, warm fur, I gave flight. I don't know, this thing's gonna just get eaten. Because everything can chase it and eat it. Maybe not the ones that run away like rabbits, you know, but lots of things can chase it and eat it. What are we gonna do? So Prometheus snuck in to Olympus. And does anybody remember what he snatched? I'm gonna let Matthew have it. He stole fire, the fire of the gods, and gave it to man. Now, picture life with no furnace, and no stove, and no oven, and no flashlights or lanterns. Fire is everything to you. Fire is your light, fire is your heat, fire is your cooking fire is everything. And you will eventually die. I don't know. I mean, you could just drink water and eat raw food and just crawl in a hole at night. You don't necessarily die unless it's really cold.
Fire is also protection.
Yeah, but see the face you made, okay? It's like, I don't want to do any of those things.
Yeah.
Yes, Jeff.
No,
yes, go ahead.
they have this,
What?
they have this word.
Yeah, some part in it.
Oh, well, yes, but it's not hours at night. It's like 6 at night. So I'm going to tell this story again, but I'm going to tell it with slightly different words. And let's hear see if you hear something, okay? Once upon a time, man was created, and a spark of something special, straight from the gods, was given him, was put in him. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
What are we talking about?
Right at the beginning, God gave,
What do we have that the other beings created by God don't have?
Smart.
Smart. And the Bible calls it something specific.
Spirit.
We have a spirit, and we are created in, what does it say in Genesis?
God's image.
In his image. Calm down. We are created in his image. We have a spark, right? Given us by God. So this story, again, this amazes me. They knew something's different about mankind. Yes, it translates into we have smarts, obviously.
Other animals are very dumb.
Yes. Even the smartest ones, even the smartest ones. So there's
Even dolphins are.
one of my favorite authors, his name's G.K. Chesterton, and he said in a fabulous book about the history of the world, he said, we go into the caves in France and we find places where men have drawn pictures of reindeer, the cave paintings. He said, you're going to have to dig a lot farther before you find a place where reindeer drew pictures of men. They just don't. Animals don't draw portraits. There's a break there. There are things, I know the monkeys can stick the stick in the hole and get the termites out. I know they kind of use tools, but they don't do portraits in the right place. All right? There's a break between us and the rest of the creatures. And this is what this story tells us, isn't it? That Prometheus gave something. Think about this Prometheus too. Think what he is. He is sort of, first of all, the one who disobeys the gods, steals from the gods, and gets thrust out of heaven and punished for it. In a sense, he's like Satan. But on the other hand, in a sense, he sacrificed himself for mankind. Do you remember his punishment? Chained to that rock, and his liver gets eaten out every day. I don't know if Olivia Coolidge says that. She just says he is tormented or something, but I give the PG-13 version in my class. His liver gets ripped out every day by an eagle, and then overnight it grows back so they can do it all again the next day. He is hung, tortured, because of his love for mankind, because of giving himself for mankind. We have both, like a prototype of both these, of Christ and of Satan, and what Prometheus did. Prometheus is a really interesting character. Yes, sir.
Didn't it sound like trying to stop the eagle?
I don't remember. I think there's an attempt. It isn't going to stop though, but later he's going to cut a deal with Zeus that's going to bring the torture to an end. But I won't go into the deal. But yes.
Also, didn't his father have insight? Oh wait, yeah, Prometheus saw the flood.
Yes, and other prophecies. Yes, you're on the right track. So in addition to this, so this story, we talked about the fact that once upon a time it was all good. Epimetheus, Dippy Epimetheus, his brother Prometheus tells him, if Zeus ever tries to give you a gift, don't take it. Because he's really ticked off with me and he will take it out on you. But he's Epimetheus, right? No foresight. And so he gets this woman. They say, oh, have a companion. You'll love her. Her name is Pandora. It means all gifts in Greek. Pandora, not to be confused with music streaming service or bracelets with lots of charms. Neither of these. Which may or may not have all the gifts. They endowed her with every gift and an insatiable curiosity, which women are proverbially afflicted with. They say that women just can't leave anything alone. I will not pronounce on this if I agree with this or not. But they gave her a chest and said, don't open it. So of course she opens it, right? No, because they want her to open it. They want mankind to be afflicted. The gods want to afflict mankind. This is where the Greeks separate widely. God loves us. And it says he planned for our redemption from the foundation of the world, right? These guys do not love the people. They want to take it out on them. So they give her a box and say, don't open it. And the first chance she gets, she opens it. And out, is it, you can tell me what plays out?
Oh,
Go ahead, do it. Do it. Go ahead.
What's weird is I would have opened the box too because a lot of the times in these stories, I've noticed that the gods are either like, oh, I respect you, open the box.
Oh, yes.
Or they're like, oh, what the heck is wrong?
Sometimes they do. So the gods, I'm glad you noticed this. These gods are very fickle.
Yeah.
You are never really sure what's going to please them and what's not going to please them. So as we go through this year, especially this semester, and read these stories, just go home and then say a thank you prayer to God, that he is always faithful and loving and true and good. And we are not. Thank him for when you were born. You were born in an age when you got to hear the gospel. And these people were not. And that is just God's grace to you. You're not better than these people. God was just gracious enough to make you born now. Okay, so of all the evils of the world, and she traps one in the box. So I never understood this, because the thing she traps is hope. And I always thought, but wait a minute, it was all bad things in the box. I don't understand. Till once I heard a version of the story that went like this. She slammed the door shut, and the last evil she left in the box was the ability to see the future. Because think about it. If you knew the future, would you hope? Where would hope? I hope it doesn't rain on the picnic day. I hope I get a Red Ryder BB gun for Christmas. I hope, I'm talking about kind of minor hopes, you know. But if you know the future, there's no hope. So I think that's the connection. It would be an evil if we knew the future. Would you already want to know every bad thing that was going to happen to you? And would you have to live with that and just look at the calendar? It's like 2 more years and that bad thing's going to happen. I wouldn't want to live like that.
I saw this movie, and there was like this witch, like when she showed up the way that they would die. And so they're like looking at it, and I'm just like, that must be terrible.
It would be terrible. And you know, in some stories, people do get told the way they were going to die, and then they try to avoid it. And then it happens anyway. They bring it about by, it would just be, no, God knew what he was doing in the Old Testament. He said, don't go to the fortune tellers. Don't go to the magicians and the fortune tellers and the people that read the cards. You have no business inquiring into the future. This is not healthy for you. Anyway, so I like that version, because then that would be an evil, and the box would be full of evils. And she's letting the box. So, does this ring a bell? A woman breaks a rule and unleashes all the evils on mankind. Say it. Eve, yes. Eve. It's the story of Eve. So look at what they remembered, but they remembered it wrongly, you know, poorly, but convolutedly. But they remembered something like this happened. A woman broke a commandment and unleashed wickedness and trouble and sickness and all the bad things we have to deal with in the world.
Deliberately told to not.
Who was deliberately told not to do it. And as far as we knew, had only one rule. We're supposed to do 10 after or 15 after. I never really,
10 after, and we have to be in our class.
Okay, so I'm gonna let you go. We did not get to talk about Orpheus and Icarus, and I didn't get to yesterday in my class either. So would you guys help me remember? Would you? Because I won't. Just say, oh, and we never talked about Icarus and Orpheus either. And maybe I can give us a little extra time at the end, because we talked a lot about other things today. I'll plan us to have more time for this. So read 124 through 189, outline, don't skip the outline part, and write a paper on any story in this book you want, just like we've been doing with the simile.
I'm doing the
Awesome. And read chapter 5. And have a wonderful week, and I will see you next time.